In 1965, President Weigel had gotten a grant for adult education, and when he brought it to the faculty, everybody was in an uproar. The faculty thought that it would have to be a dilution of the St. John's program, it would be a disgrace, and it would be a publicity gimmick. Nobody spoke up for it but Laurence Berns, because he had had experience with the basic program in Chicago. He stood up for that it wouldn't have to be all those things, that it could be done and it could be done decently. That afternoon, President Weigel called him up and asked him to plan the whole program. He was supposed to draw up the reading lists just for the one segment called Politics and Society, but he knew that the St. John's College faculty wouldn't agree to anything that was just a fragment, so he decided to draw up the whole thing. He felt that people would come for one semester and it would be more fruitful if they dealt with one subject matter. And there was plenty there, and if they had everything the way we do with undergraduates, it would just be too overwhelming. I mean, they couldn't feel like they had really gotten somewhere, or they couldn't feel like they had had an encounter with the fundamental readings in one given subject. Laurence had the idea of starting with modern readings because he thought that in each of the sections, to start with modern readings would be more comfortable to the people who were taking the courses. They would feel like more at home. But you would get to the point where you would realize that the modern authors just weren't giving answers that were sufficient and satisfying. And then you had a good jumping off point to get to the ancients. He thought it would help getting people into the readings and let them realize that the modern answers weren't sufficient. Because when you just throw ancient things at them, they might think, okay, that's sort of, archival and something historical and so on, but what does it have to do with us? We had mostly teachers as students, and then quite a number of people came from Baltimore. There was a grant allowed for 6 people from the inner city schools to come and take these courses. But then there were people from New York and from all over. We knew that a lot of teachers were out there who were clamoring for some way of getting reaccredited without having to take boring courses. If you think back to the late 60s, they were rather troubled days. And so these people who were coming from these largely inner city schools, they confronted with something like Plato and Aristotle really had a kind of shock that there were different possible answers to what they had thought. It's wonderful, and you have to struggle, but you realize that what you were given as an education was really shallow. And now you were all of a sudden, you were plunged into something that was deep. And that was very, very satisfying, but also infuriating because you had to make up for so much. And also, I think the people were worried how they could incorporate what they were learning now into what they were doing before. People really had to learn to make a seminar. They weren't used to that kind of give and take in a conversation. And, well, it took a while. People just didn't quite know how to speak to those books, like Plato's Republic or Aristotle's Politics. For instance, there was one woman who, when we got to Hobbes, she thought that was the way life should be talked about. And then there was the interchange with the man from Baltimore, who then tried to tell her something about the difference between external rewards and internal rewards, and that Hobbes was talking mostly about external rewards and Plato had talked mostly about internal rewards. And so they learned to address each other as well as the books. In the preceptorial, which was Aristotle's Politics and was about practical politics, the people were supposed to apply their readings to what was going on today. The papers they wrote really, one was Mr. Aristotle advising the mayor of Detroit what to do with the situation of riots and so on that had developed in Detroit. I mean, very poetically done, but really getting into the nitty-gritty of the political situation. It was a very, very dynamic summer because of the political situation, and also because they really felt for the first time they were confronted with some thoughts that might really bring solutions that before had not been available to them. Why didn't we know about all those books? I mean, that's what people said. They were really angry about having been cheated by their educations. So I think this kind of experience here empowered a lot of these people to find new ways of speaking why there had to be a change. I remember Robert Goldwyn and Laurence at the end shaking hands and saying, you know, I think we've done a good thing. And over the years, I think that has shown itself to be more and more true, that this is really something that has brought a tremendous enrichment to people's lives.